What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. In this video, we're going to be talking about gerrymandering, um, election rigging, and how the Supreme Court just made a ruling that allows the Trump administration to continue to rig the midterm elections. Yeah, that's right. So that's what we're going to talk about with their ruling over the Texas gerrymandering. So thank you very much for joining me. If you are new to ClearTalk, please consider checking out more videos and consider subscribing, like, share, comment if you like what you see to help get more videos in front of more people. If you would like to check out videos from my other channels, JMDPLAY, Puzzling, if you like what you see there, consider subscribing to those channels as well. That would be amazing. There's Patreon there if you want to give any kind of support. $3, $3 a month. You can support any channels that you would like to help grow those channels, to help grow Patreon, help grow the JMD Nation, contribute in any kind of way you would like to. Any support you give is very much appreciated, and I thank you very much. And if you're returning, you're freaking amazing. You really are. You're freaking amazing. Welcome back. Thank you for coming back over and over and over again because we love you here. All right, so what are we talking about? So what has happened? This has been going on for a few months now, where you had Trump's administration, Trump's regime, requesting for states across the United States, Republican states in particular, GOP-led states, to redistrict their states mid-census, mid-redistricting period, okay, to try to pick up seats so that they can guarantee winning and holding the House and Congress, the House and Senate, particularly the House in midterm elections in 2026. That's what happened. Okay, we are in the middle. This is a mid. You typically redistrict every 10 years, and it's usually done through a census. You do a census. You get the count of your population in your state and where they are, how people have moved and shifted around the state, in and out of the state, throughout the state, and you draw district lines. Now, this is usually partisan to some degree, admittedly, depending upon who's in control of the state. But the idea, the Voting Rights Act, is the idea of, in redistricting, making sure that the district lines, dividing up population through districts and how they're represented is fair to all voters within the state. That's the idea. And whenever this is done, even on an actual time that is supposed to be done, when it's up for being done, typically this then is sent to your state courts if it's questioned, if it's brought into question by any side, and those state courts would look over the evidence, look over the maps, look over the populations set up, and whether or not it was drawn to represent fairly the population. And then they make a ruling to uphold it or to freeze it. Or usually have them redraw it. If something seems a little off, they'd be like, look, this area right here doesn't seem to add up. Let's redraw, give me something else. Give me an alternative that would seem more fair. And that's what usually happens. What you have right now going on is a request from the Trump GOP to have these GOP-led states to do this mid-moment, halfway through when you would typically do this. So this is being done ahead of time. This is being done when it's not normally scheduled to be done. Now, I have been on record saying that I think that this stuff should be done more frequently to represent people moving around. And usually I feel like this should be done more in like main elections, general elections for president, stuff like that. But okay. So I get the idea of doing this, but and making a rule where this is done more frequently. But this is being done without that, and also being done without the approval of the citizens of each of the states. Now, people made a big deal about California's vote just last month. Or was it last month? I think, or month before, October. No, it was last month. Last month. Sorry, November. The beginning of November. About the Prop 50, making a big deal of, oh, this is purposely being done, and it's being done. This is wrong, and blah 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 blah. And I made the argument that although I disagree, because it does look like, or that it did appear to be like a gerrymander-like activity for that state particularly, at least they proposed it to the citizens to put a vote to it to whether or not they accepted it or not. And that vote was passed. The majority of people accepted it and said, yes, we would like you to redraw the districts. Period. So at least California did that. And so I could be like, okay, well, the people there accept it. They want it to be done. So, okay. You can't say that about Texas or any of the other multiple states that are attempting to do it without support. Now, one might argue, well, yeah, but they're more than likely, there's a good chance that okay, well, if there's a good chance, then put it up to the vote. Put it up to vote for the people to vote on. Especially this being a mid-term area outside of where it would normally be done. Simple. Like if it was a regular period in which it would normally be done, that's one thing. It's supposed to be done, period. The census happens, whatever, that's when it's regularly done, no problem. No vote needed. We expect it. But when you're doing it mid-time, when it's outside the realm of normal process, it should be approved by the citizens of that state. That's my opinion. Okay, but nevertheless, this isn't happening. So what happened? Texas redrew. That's the reason why California pushed against, did theirs as a counter, because basically Texas said, okay, we're redrawing the maps, and we've redrawn them purposely to gain 5. It wasn't even like they were just like, well, we're just redrawing to make sure things are more accurate, make sure things are more fair. No, they literally stated that they were purposely doing it to gain 5 seats. That was the whole purpose, to redraw the lines partisanly to gain 5 seats. Now, what's usually argued as a problem when it comes to gerrymandering is that it's racially biased. And the Supreme Court has backed, lower courts and Supreme Court has backed previous precedent of not redrawing on racial lines, trying to actively suppress Black, Latino, minority, whatever communities so that they are less represented. Okay. But in this one, they are arguing that they're doing it on partisan Republican, Democrat. And apparently in a 2019 ruling by the Supreme Court, that is okay. If you're doing it on partisan lines, that's okay. So what happened in Texas? Texas redrew the maps. A lower court in Texas, a lower federal court in Texas ruled against the map, freezing it. Three judges ruled, saying that it was, even though they were arguing that it was partisan, it was clearly racial and that it was wrong and it shouldn't be upheld. They went through 9 days of trial, going through evidence and everything, and determined that it was wrongfully drawn up and that they were freezing the map and it was not to be used. And then that went to the Supreme Court, which ruled, I think just yesterday or the day before, that the lower courts were wrong in doing that, and that it was on partisan, that the Texas lawyers that went to the Supreme Court to make the argument said that it was on partisan terms, not racial terms, and the Supreme Court upheld that it was partisan and that it wasn't fair and that should be allowed, and so they overruled the lower court. With the 2 or 3 whatever members of the Supreme Court giving dissents against it, that they did not agree with the ruling, but because our Supreme Court is conservatively held strong, they gave the ruling in favor of the GOP. Which is something that is becoming very frequent and continuing to happen over and over again, that our lower courts are pushing back against activity that is going on and happening from Trump and his regime and GOP lawmakers across the country who are in support of that regime and the activities that are going on there. Lower courts have over and over and over and over again pushed back, saying that things are not right and that this is wrong or illegal potentially or whatever. And the cases that make it to the Supreme Court is overruling, showing the bipartisan of the Supreme Court, or the partisanship of the Supreme Court. And not to mention that the 3 judges in Texas, the lower courts that ruled against the map, at least one of them, if not 2 of them, one of them was Trump appointed, and one of them was Reagan appointed. Both of which said that it was wrong. But if you don't believe me, that's fine. I have an article here to go through. This is in the USA Today. Texas can use a congressional map drawn to give President Donald Trump and Republicans an advantage in 2026 midterm elections, the Supreme Court said December 4th in a decision that may help the GOP keep control of the U.S. House. An ideologically divided court paused a lower court's ruling that the map likely discriminates against racial minorities by diluting the voting power of Hispanic and Black Texans. That opinion, which replaces a temporary freeze on the ruling issued by Justice Samuel Alito on November 21st, keeps the map in place for the midterm elections as litigation over the boundaries continues. The High Court said the lower court's ruling was improper because it came too close to the election. So the Supreme Court says that the lower court's ruling was improper because it is too close to election. But yet the actions of the gerrymandering was not improper because it was too close to elections. Make that make sense. The district, which would be why the lower court I mean, would be, in my opinion, easily a reason why the lower court, outside of the fact of the racial bias and whatever. I mean, like, the district court improperly inserted itself into an active primary campaign, causing much confusion and causing much confusion and upsetting the delicate federal-state balance in elections, a majority wrote in a brief, unsigned opinion. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented in an opinion written by Justice Elena Kagan. Kagan wrote, "The majority's decision disrespects the work of the district court did through a 9-day hearing that included testimony from nearly 24 witnesses and thousands of exhibits. We are a higher court than the district court, but we are not a better one when it comes to making such a fact-based decision," she wrote. That's why she said the justices are supposed to uphold the district court's decision as long as it's plausible. Alito said that the rule doesn't apply because the district court erred by not requiring those challenging the map to produce an alternative. So because the lower courts did not require for an alternative to be given, then it did not apply. Makes it implausible, I guess. In response to the decision, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said his state is paving the way as we take our country back, district by district, state by state. But Representative Susan Delbene, maybe, I don't know, head of the campaign arms of House Democrats, said Republicans won't get as big of a bump from the map as they want because the public continues to turn on Republicans and their broken promises. Other Democrats pointed an accusatory finger, that's right, at the court itself. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said the court's majority made a partisan decision. I do agree with that, as much as Jeffries is a moron. Tonight's ruling for far-right justices on the Supreme Court is further proof that the extremists will do whatever to rig the midterm elections. At the urging of the Trump administration, the GOP-controlled Texas legislation drew new district lines midway through the usual 10-year redistricting cycle, setting off a race among states to get in the game. Some other efforts are also being challenged in court. 5 other states have already adopted new congressional maps: California, Missouri, North Carolina, Ohio, and Utah. In addition, the Indiana Republicans are debating new boundaries. Virginia Democrats are edging towards redistricting in Richmond, while GOP leaders in Florida state legislation are gearing up for action. Pressure is also building on Democratic leaders in Maryland. 4 other states might take steps depending on how courts respond: Alabama, Louisiana, New York, and North Dakota. This is becoming a full-on mid-cycle redistricting in an effort. This is all being fueled by the actions of the Trump administration. And the concerns over trying to rig or control, gain power for the midterms by the administration. Because they know they're in such deep shit right now, and they see the overwhelming distaste for actions that are being done. Yes, they are being wholly supported by those, 23 to 30% that are just hardcore supporting them. But the rest of the nation, the other 70+% of Americans are going, we don't fucking agree here. While we, some may, widely agree that they would like some things to happen, they don't like the way the administration is going about doing it, which is the problem. and some just straight up don't want it to happen at all. Despite the uncertainty about what the playing field will look like, Democrats remain favored to flip the House next year, according to bipartisan handicappers at the University of Virginia's City for Politics. That could change, however, if the Supreme Court issues a ruling in the pending case from Louisiana that could open up the door to more redistricting attempts in southern states. Depending on what the court says and how quickly the justices rule, Republicans could create multiple districts they've been expected to win. The new Texas map, was designed to help Republicans win 5 more seats, although that's not a sure thing. Republicans currently hold 25 of the state's 38, where they have a slim majority. If Democrats seize control, they could block Trump's legislative agenda and launch investigations into his administration. Racial gerrymandering. In redistricting battles, the Supreme Court has said federal courts can review whether race was improperly used to draw new lines, but not whether partisan politics has a factor. Civil rights groups and others challenge Texas' new map, arguing that it is fewer districts where Hispanic and black voters together make up the majority, diminishing their voting power. This is as stark as the case of racial gerrymandering as one can imagine, lawyers for some of the challengers said in a filing. The 3-judge panel in Texas that reviewed the map ruled 2-1 that Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott directed the legislature to use race to redraw the lines following a demand from the Trump administration that discussed the racial makeup of some districts. The public perception of this case is that it's about politics. To be sure, politics played a role in drawing the 2025 map, but it was so much more than just politics. Judge Jeffrey Brown, who was appointed to the federal bench by Trump in 2019, wrote, "Substantial evidence shows that Texas racially gerrymandered the 2025 map." In an irate and unusual personal dissent, Judge Jerry Smith, who was appointed by former President Ronald Reagan, your prized president, all you Republicans out there, called the decision the most blatant exercise of judicial activism that I have ever witnessed. That's pretty stern. That's pretty stern. Texas attorneys told the Supreme Court that partisanship, not race, drove the redistricting. And the lower court's ruling has caused chaos because candidates have already gathered signatures and filed applications to run in the new districts, they argued. Weighing in on behalf of Texas, the Justice Department told the Supreme Court that the lower court misconstrued the direction of the administration gave the state. Indeed, the record here affirmatively shows that the 2025 map was drawn in a race-blind manner, the Justice Department wrote in a filing. The civil rights groups and voters challenging the map said the lower court's decision was based on an extensive hearing that included hours of footage of legislatures and Abbott discussing their motives. The challengers also said that the impending December 8th filing deadline for Texas candidates running in the spring primary is not a reason to allow the new map to be used. Texas created its own emergency by unnecessarily choosing to create new maps, they told the Supreme Court, and can't insulate unconstitutional conduct from judicial review by deliberately timing that conduct close to an election. So you have a decision being made by the Supreme Court to allow this gerrymandering on partisan rule or partisan influence, because that's okay. Which now opens up. There's going to be rulings for California, Missouri, North Carolina, which, like, North Carolina, they redistricted like mainly around one area, and it was a solely Democratic area. It was to split up an area that was held by a Democrat. Okay. But you have hearings that are going to be looked at for all these other states and their maps. The one big one in question is California, because now that they have upheld Texas on partisanship, and the argument for California is like wholeheartedly, that whole entire process was wrapped around partisanship. It was wrapped around, the idea was to counter that Texas was doing theirs solely to gain 5 seats. Okay. Even though it was seen and argued that those 5 seats were, yes, partisan. There was partisan activity for it, like partisan like purpose for it. But it was done in a way that was very much racially motivated. That's what the lower courts found. In California, though, that was so, and it was done without, like I said, without the approval of the, without any kind of vote, not democratically decided. In California, though, you had a vote happen, and they countered. There was, the whole purpose was to counter Texas, to draw the lines to grow Democratic seats. So it was purposely and like very publicly put out in a vote that way. So now you have the argument, okay, what we're waiting to see now is whether the Supreme Court is going to take up, they're going to take up the California one, and how they rule in California. Because if they rule in Texas in favor of partisanship lines, that it was okay for them to gerrymander mid-cycle and allow for this map to stand, then they must do the same for California. Because while Texas is questionable, California is not. Their entire process was purposely for that reason, to counter Texas. And not only that, it was voted on by their own citizens in a democratic vote. So if they completely go against California, then we know wholeheartedly the Supreme Court is completely partisan, and that they are purposely trying to rig. But now you have all these states now that are trying to redistrict, and the push is going to be for more and more and more and more states. You're going to want, if this is opened up the whole of every state to redo this, to have a mid-cycle redistricting, all because of the concern around this administration. This is what this administration has caused. You have, this administration is causing Republican GOP-led states to redistrict in a way to maintain power, to purposely redistrict in a way that would make sure that they gained more seats that they could to maintain power. It's a power grab. That's what it is. Mid-cycle, pushing states to do this in a power grab. Because they know that the actions they are taking is pushing people more and more and more and more towards people being pushed out and the House being flipped, so that in some kind of way we have something in Congress that is pushing back and can stop legislation that the administration wants to push through. That's the reason why the administration is trying so hard to make sure they get everything they can before midterms, so they ain't even going to worry about it. That was Trump out of Trump's mouth himself. We need to get everything done right now so that and we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about passing anything else. That's the whole point. And that's because they fear that the actions that they are taking is going to flip the House and possibly even flip the Senate. So their reaction to that is to gerrymander and do everything they can to rig the election. So now you have Democratic-led states seeing this happen, and now they're being forced to counter. Whoa, wait a minute. You mean all of y'all are going to redistrict mid-cycle just so you can try to gain seats? No, we can't. That's not right. And if the courts are going to uphold it, even after lower courts, I mean that's what throws me. The administration and Republicans always talk about pushing things back to the states, allow the states to make decisions, Federal court needs, the federal government needs to stay the hell out of state stuff. You literally had a state federal court make a decision on a action that was made within the state that they claim was wrong. After 9 days of looking at evidence and hearing out witnesses, and yet the federal Supreme Court pushed back against it, deeming it improper. I mean, if that doesn't show that it's all about power and control, I don't know what is. But now you're having, like I said, Democratic states have to be pressured to do the same thing in order to counter what's going on, to make the election fair, because the GOP is bound and determined to not make it fair. And this is all being done from this is what the Trump regime does. This is what they have been doing. This is what their whole thing they're after. Make the Congress as irrelevant as they can. They've made the judges as irrelevant as they can. They're trying to make any pushback on higher education as irrelevant as they can so that they can dismantle the Department of Education and everything. They're trying to make assistance program as irrelevant as they can so that they can cancel all that so that people can get like they're making everything possible. Now they're making the elections as irrelevant as they can. I mean, he said that just elect me, and you won't have to vote again. We will make it where you won't have to vote again. He has said over and over again that they are trying to make it to where Republicans stay in power indefinitely. That's their whole point. And they will do whatever they can to make that happen. Doesn't matter. Your vote will not matter. We won't need it. And they knew that that road, that path was going to be met with all kinds of challenges. As they stated in the meeting the other day we talked about, they said that there's been over 500 lawsuits against the administration. The most of, like, more than all the previous administrations back to Reagan combined. And they stated that like it was a good thing, like it made them viable or something, like it made them tough and good and amazing. They must be doing something right because there's so much lawsuits against us because the judicial system is so corrupted. No, it's because you are corrupted and you are doing acts that are unconstitutional and immoral and just flat out illegal crimes. This is the process. And this is how they push and push and push and push and push to try to gain more and more, little bit of baby steps of control. A little bit more here, a little bit more there. Doing this one over here, a little bit over here, a little bit over here. This is what a fascist regime does. Create chaos. Create division. Spew hatred. Try to make all avenues of opposition irrelevant so that they can maintain power and dominance. And they knew, like I said, they knew that the path for that was going to be hard because our country set up is purposely set up to prevent that. But that's the reason why they are undermining and trying their best to make all the opposition set up, the checks and balances, irrelevant. And this is just another avenue to make that happen. But let me know what you think. Until next time, Clear Talk. Peace. I'm out.